From watching this gameplay, initially you may be thinking that this is a DPS build. The way I'm using the Ravenous and the damage I'm dealing with it is equivalent to the gameplay you would normally see on a DPS build, but no. And you probably couldn't even begin to think how I set this up. As a matter of fact, I want you to do this right now.
Immediate medical assistance needed. Detected.
Before I show you the build, comment below what you think it could be. Anyways, I call it the Incomparable Hybrid. It's a build I've been itching to put together but never was able to because we didn't have the ninja bike. You see, I had a small issue with that exotic when it first came out. It seemed like every build I attempted to revamp in my builds library with the ninja bike never worked. Nothing ever worked with it. But I believe the ninja bike in the Division 2 at least is only for specified builds. Not like in Div 1. It felt like back then, after the ninja bike came out, I didn't want to make a build without it. But it's so different now, based on the gear and weapons we have. Sometimes, it just doesn't work, and that's a fact. But when it does, especially in this build, it works. And it's only possible now. So let's get into it. Let me first explain the concept of this build. I wanted a skill build that essentially has weapon damage. This effectively makes it a hybrid. But for the attributes on the gear, I was able to roll everything to a skill attribute. So here's where the unique aspect of this comes out. If you noticed, the brand sets here all have a weapon damage stat baked into them. And bear with me because it's all going to make sense in a minute here. Y'all's 2 piece grants weapon damage. Walker Harris 1 piece, then the 𝐵𝐼𝐻𝐼's holster, and finally the 3 piece 𝐴𝐻𝐼𝐻. 𝐴𝐻𝐼𝐻 is in the top 3 for meta skill builds. On the flip side, the 𝐵𝐼𝐻𝐼's holster is in top 3 for meta DPS builds. That is directly due to the weapon damage baked into it, and that is why I'm using the Ravenous as my priority. So are you now starting to understand why I have all these weapon damage values? And if you're not familiar with the Ravenous, let me explain. Its main source of damage, meaning that explosion damage, is literally weapon damage. So the more you have, the more you will deal in that shoulder switch explosion. And not many people use the Ravenous without the intention of utilizing the explosion 90% of the time. That's the whole goal of the Ravenous, aside from the bonus armor from the other shoulder switch. And get this, the Ravenous is not the only exotic that scales with weapon damage. The Pestilence, Plague of the Outcast talent, does that as well, but I prefer the Ravenous. To me, it has so many more advantages over other weapons, with its ability to penetrate directly through the Chunga's and Mechanical Dog's armor, and overall just being able to completely chunk large portions of enemies' health. With the weapon damage I have on this build, that's exactly what I'm doing. I've added it up, and a total is 30%, which is a ton for a skill build, and it could be more. because you know how stuff always happens behind the scenes in this game that you don't notice. And you know I love skill builds because they allow me to accomplish so many things at once. 𝐻𝐸 is primed for skill build, skill damage and skill haste for the 2-piece. So when you roll more skill haste and damage, that's when you can actually see the difference in effectiveness as opposed to the average build. Normally with skill builds, you let all the skills do the work. In most cases, your weapon is rarely utilized, but the combination of Ravenous with, for example, a drone like I was using is devastating to any enemy. And remember, Walker has 2 pieces damage to armor, which always helps. And with y'all, you can never go wrong with a little bit of hazard protection. I was also thinking of other ways to make this work, like with the tip of the spear's 4-piece where you can get up to 40% weapon damage, but it feels like this was the only way that felt the best and that synergized really well. You need 6 skill tiers, so the Picaro's Holster's 2-piece helps you with 1 extra. Technician specialization gives you another, and finally Ninja Bike also grants the last one. That's 3 free skill tiers, which means that you can make this build more tanky or give yourself a little more DPS with weapon cores. The 6 tiers, along with the skill damage attributes I spoke of earlier, is what will push this build over the top. That being said, it's completely your choice as to what skills you want to use with this. I went with the Striker Drone and Oxidizer. This is one of my favorite combos, as you know. Get them out of cover with the Oxidizer, then let the drone clean them up. You can use the turret also, but I don't recommend using skills that rely heavily on status effects or explosive damage. Not with this at least, because that's not where this build's strength ultimately lies. And one more thing, y'all. I just wanted to make another hybrid without the capacitor. I always make builds with the capacitor simply because you get weapon damage for skill tiers. Why not use it, right? But I wanted to figure out a way to deal damage with the weapon without using the capacitor, and I think this is perfect. Oh yeah, before I forget, the chest piece talent I'm using is Spark, which gives you weapon damage for dealing skill damage. This also stacks onto the native weapon damage I was talking about on the build, so it's even more that I forgot to mention. But I really want to hear what you guys have to say about this build in the comment section, because when conceptualizing it, I thought it wouldn't work, but it definitely works when actually playing. I'm just glad I'm able to share it with you. Let me know what you think of it down below, but that'll do it for this one, fam. And if you enjoyed this, drop a like. Also subscribe if you're new here. I'll catch you in the next one. Be right out.